Hi, this is Hans from Request for Music, and going to have a look at using XINGSHI as a standard oscillator. That means that we're only going to use one frame, and the time is not important of that one frame. It's a looping oscillator that uses frames for all different steps that you're going to take, but since we're only going to use it as a standard oscillator, time is not important. It's going to loop through. We just use the pitch from the carrier, which is the top one here. We use the modulator and we use the pitch and the modulation value from that, and we'll might use the noise from that and a modulator because it's actually a frequency modulation or frequency modulator source as an oscillator. So I've got the pitch hooked up, I've got the gate hooked up, I've got it hooked up to the mains of VM, and then the standard sound is just a normal sine wave. The only thing is that it has the Air Galactic reverb on board, so it sounds at least a lot nicer than normal. And the Galactic has a size, bright, replace, detune, and dry wet knobs as controls. So that means that if I would turn the brightness back, I get less of those, all of those sort of echo-ish kind of sounds in there. And obviously, if I turn the dry wet down, I get much more of the normal sine wave. So let's do it a bit less than it was, something like this. And sorry about that. So what I have here normally is just the pitch. So means that if I dial that, then obviously the pitch is going up. I also have a transpose knob here on top, so I can dial that up if I just double click that and dial that up. I go up there, and since this is the modulator, the second one, I can just modulate that, so I can dial that up. Let's put that back to the standard value again. Dial this up, and you hear the modulation coming in from the carrier. And frequency modulation works in such a way that the ratio between the first and the second, or between the carrier and the modulator, is very important. So if I dial the pitch back for the modulator, or up, you get strange sounds like that as soon as the ratio is not an integer value. So if I double click this and put this on 1, I get a normal tone. So let's do 1C. And actually, um, I changed the editing system, so that means that if I double click and I press the slash in front of it, I can add a couple of semitones. So if I want to add an octave to it, I just press /12 and so I get something like that. And obviously there's a normal envelope on board, so I can dial that back a bit. And so if I wanted sort of a flutish kind of sound, oh man, I'm a bit rusty on my notes, so it seems. So I can play tones like that, and so modulation goes a long way. That way, dial, just add an octave to it again. So you hear that the more difference there is, the more it changes in character for the sound. So let's put this back to 0. So, and now dial the pitch back for the carrier. So I can actually do the slash thing again and do a minus and then -12 and dial that back even more, so slash minus 12. So you hear that really changes the sound, and I can actually also switch the fixed button on for either of those, and I have a second carrier that I can switch on. So maybe first get this back to 0, get my modulator off, and so I'm back at the sine wave, dial the volume in for the second carrier, and dial that up. And then if I go on and modulate that, I get different sounds altogether as well. And last but not least, there's also a noise section in there. So that means that, let's first take the modulator out again, and I'll take the second carrier out. So I got my normal sine wave, modulation for the noise wave on, and dial up my cutoff, because there's a filter that is filtering the noise from 0 to 15,000 hertz, and you got a resonance that you can set. But so that means that if you have a low setting like this, it's actually really doing low frequency, or it's letting the low frequency through. So that means that you also almost have sort of a vibrato kind of sound if you dial it low enough. Something like this, and maybe up the resonance a bit. And if you put the cutoff a lot higher, then you actually start hearing sort of noise distortion into the sound, because that also modulates. And once you combine that with normal modulation, you get more complex sounds. So yeah, that's the first one, just using it as a standard oscillator. So thanks for your attention, and I hope to be back soon. Cheers, bye bye.